Hey, everybody. Hope you guys are doing well. U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham is going viral again for making statements that he's wanting his own district to send their sons and daughters to the Middle East to fight Israel's wars. He says that flat out. And he's also stating that he stands with Israel above isolationist, anti-interventionist Americans. So this is pretty shocking just to hear it come out of his mouth so bluntly. Even political commentator, right-wing Matt Walsh is calling it out, among many other people on the right. So take a listen to this and let's talk about it.
All the anti-Seminites, to all the isolationists, I don't believe. Forget it. I'm not with you. I'm with Israel. I will be with Israel to our dying day. They're the best ally we could hope for. So we have a commander-in-chief in President Trump, who I think is Ronald Reagan plus. All the anti-Seminites to all the isolationists.
So, I mean, first off, if it really came down to true people that just hate a specific people because of their religion, that's one thing. But we know that when he says the word anti-Semite, he's clearly referring to anti-Zionists, people that don't support Israel. We know that that fits in his definition because he's one of the individuals that was heavily pushing and heavily pushes the IRA definition of anti-Semitism, and we know that based on his actions. That aside, put that completely aside, he's stating anti-interventionists. Let's hear.
To all the isolationists.
Isolationist. So if you're an American and you are an isolationist, which is simply just a policy position, where how much you want to see America, on the global stage. If that's your political position, he wants nothing to do with you, and he still wants to stand with Israel. What other country has politicians that are saying stuff like this? I wonder, whenever I hear him talk like this, and just wait, it gets worse. So the rest of the clips I'm going to play here for you guys. I wonder whenever people hear him talk like this, Israelis hear him talk like this, do they laugh? I wonder if Israelis listen and they're like, yeah, we have the Americans like our lapdog. They have to be. Because if an Israeli politician said the same thing about America, the way American politicians talk about Israel, they'd say things like, why are you talking about Americans so obsessively? Why are you so obsessed with the Gentiles? We've heard Israeli politicians say this stuff before. So if it was the other way around, it would never fly. Even former Israeli Mossad agent Victor Ostrovsky brought that up. He stated, never would an Israeli allow Israeli politicians to do what American politicians are doing. So that's the first thing. It's beyond treason at this point, but the entire government's corrupt. So you can't, it doesn't matter. Nobody can really stop it, it seems like. Now, it gets even worse. He's stating that he's pushing people from his own district to send their son and daughters to fight in the Middle East. Take a listen here.
I go back to South Carolina. I'm asking them to send their sons and daughters over to the Mideast. I go back to South Carolina. I'm asking them to send.
Oh my gosh. And he's speaking on Sean Hannity here. Wow. He's telling people in South Carolina to send their sons and daughters to the Middle East to ultimately fight Israel's wars. So he's a baby boomer. He never had children. There's a lot of speculation about his sexuality. That's aside. I accept everybody. Put that aside. It doesn't matter. When you're not, and I'm not a parent, I'm 29, I don't have any kids, but when you're not thinking about the upcoming generation, and you're not thinking about, you're not a father, you're not a mother, you're not thinking about the next generation, and you're telling people that are raising children, just send the most important thing in your life to the Middle East to go die for a foreign country. And he has no problem doing that. Totally out of touch. And, the fact that he's able to say that so brazenly, just imagine if Israeli politicians told their children or told people in their district to go ahead and send their children off to fight for a foreign country, to fight for the Americans' wars, which have nothing to do with Israel, in China or wherever else, if that were to happen. It would never fly. This part specifically, I think out of this entire thing that's going viral, all of these different clips, this one specifically shocks me. It's telling Americans to go ahead and send their sons and daughters to fight in the Middle East. That's what shocks me more than anything. And you know, I'd say maybe 4 or 5 days ago, Candace Owens received a ton of backlash because she went on social media and she doubled down on it, which is awesome. She went on social media and she said, "Don't send your sons and daughters to fight Israel's wars. If they're in the military, just get them out. It's pointless. Don't do this." And she got a ton of backlash just from the Israel mob, which is, of course, that's what's expected, because they're telling Americans just go fight for Israel. But here's a situation where we have somebody that's telling Americans to send their sons and daughters to go and die. And we know it's not in Americans' interest. Everybody watching, every single American, except those that are really brainwashed, consistently watching Fox News, we know that this war is not for the United States. Everybody knows that. And now the United States is trying to pull out of this, and I'll be talking about that more here in a minute. Yet it's the person who's advocating for it, like Lindsey Graham, gets less of a pushback by the establishment, not the people, because now we're seeing the people is obviously talking about this. The establishment is not pushing back. If anything, the establishment supports his rhetoric here. While when Candace Owens says the exact opposite, which is more justified because the war's not for America, then the establishment goes after her. The pro-Israel mafia goes after her when she's much more in the right, because it's not America's war. It's not America's war. So let's see. Again, it's just shocking that he can say this and there's no pushback by the establishment itself. There's no pushback by the establishment itself. That is what is so worrisome here. And, if it really came down to war that was in America's interest, if it really came down to a war that was for the benefit of the United States, I'd say getting rid of the hostile occupation, the hostile Israeli occupation of the U.S. government, is the most just war to ever fight, most just war to ever fight. Put me on the front lines. I'm not kidding. If there was a war against Israel in a hypothetical fairy tale, put me on the front lines. That's how much I'm so genuinely serious about this. I would love to fight that war. I'd love to assist in any way I can. I'm probably one of the most anti-war people out there. But if that was possible, if that was a reality, put me there. Put me there. But because ultimately, it's for America's interests. It's for America's interests because it makes sense. That there's an actual hostile occupation. That there's an entity, there's a political ideology called Zionism that's not beneficial for America's interests, and it's swaying America in a direction that's not good. It's not good. Here's the thing. None of this has to happen right now. None of this could have been solved decades ago, and it could still be solved in an instant. If the United States actually had power and the U.S. president wasn't bought out, or our entire Congress wasn't bought out, you could solve the Middle East crisis within just a couple days. This is what you do. Pull out, sanction Israel, force them to pull out of the West Bank, force them to accept a two-state solution, tell them, we're just going to sanction you. They would have to capitulate. Netanyahu said it himself. Israeli officials know this, that if the world sanctioned Israel, then Israel would have no choice but to pull out of the West Bank because they wouldn't be able to handle the financial sanctions imposed against them. That's fact. That's fact. If the United States imposed it on Israel, that's fact. And guess what? 57 Arab countries, Arab and Muslim countries, came together last year, or 2 years ago in 2024, and gave a public statement stating that if Israel just simply accepts the two-state solution at this point, the entire Muslim League, I believe, or Islamic League of 57 nations would uniformly recognize Israel immediately and ensure Israel's safety and security. Is that not what we thought Israel wanted all of this time? Is that not what establishment propaganda has been spewing all this time, that Israel just wants peace? It doesn't want peace. It wants to expand. It wants to expand. And it's a population of 7 million Israeli Jews. They're fine with the territory they have. They're fine with the territory they have. They don't need any more. They don't need any more. They don't need any more. So this desire to expand is not even based on necessity. They're fine. They're fine. It's not based on necessity. So it's just based on a political, it's based on a rabid political ideology. And you know that if it came down to America's interests right now, America's interest would be to impose that. Impose that. So that way America could actually have peace in the Middle East and it can actually pull soldiers out and there could actually be stability in the world. But of course, the Israelis don't want that. And instead, we have to do this continuous forever war model. At what point does it stop? Well, I mean, American citizens are waking up. We're starting to recognize it. But unfortunately, his, midterm elections, Republican primaries for his district are June 9th. And if you look at all of the polling, he's leading. He's leading by double digits. I last time I checked, he has about 77, 80% chance of winning his primary. Around 77, 75% plus, let's say, because everything teeters. It's shocking. It's shocking that with such a high chance of winning, this is where we're at. You would assume that everybody, because we're seeing it on social media, people are calling it out. But unfortunately, when you have the president of the United States supporting you and endorsing you, like he's been endorsing Lindsey Graham, that has a massive amount of sway. And, it goes to show that there's still a lot of people that are really absorbed watching Fox News, watching mainstream media, that what we see on social media, what we see online, whatever streaming platforms you're on, YouTube, whatever else, it seems like there's still a massive amount of people that are still watching the establishment stuff. And I think it's on us to get them off of it. I say this especially to not even just younger people. I say this to everybody that still has family, parents especially, baby boomers especially, that are watching Fox News. Get them off of it. Assume it's meth. Honestly, assume it's a drug. Get them off of it. Get them off of it. There's actually lots of studies done that the more somebody watches Fox News, the more likely they are to push neoconservative foreign policy. It's a cancer on America right now. Get them off. If you want to make a difference on the planet and you have a family member that watches Fox News, that is the biggest difference you can make for the security and safety of America. Get them off of that. Put them anywhere else. They can still be as conservative as they like. Get them somewhere else. Put them on an anti-neocon conservative channel. There's a lot of them now. There's a lot of them. It's a cancer. It's a cancer. It's plaguing this country because you're going to get more of that when you watch Fox News. You're going to get more of that. So that's where we're at now. And here's the thing. He's pushing Lindsey Graham to send your sons and daughters to the Middle East to die for Israel, while at the same time right now in this current war, Israel and the United States are not achieving their objectives, which was regime change. It's not happening. So now let me go ahead and share my screen here so you guys can see this. Israeli officials now are considering an end to the Iran war without regime change, as well as U.S. officials. Now, just yesterday, I interviewed former CIA analyst Larry Johnson about this, and he said that U.S. objectives in this war are actually, they're not succeeding, and they were never going to, because apparently the intelligence community came up to Donald Trump with a briefing prior to this action, this military action, and they said the chances of a regime change are very, very slim. Then Donald Trump started this, of course, along with Netanyahu's wishes and Netanyahu pushing him into this. And the UK came forward with a similar statement that they don't believe airstrikes alone are going to cause regime change based on their intelligence. Yet we still went forward with it. Why? Well, because Donald Trump is blackmailed. Donald Trump is blackmailed. Put aside, maybe you don't believe he's blackmailed. I think the evidence is abundant. But that aside, Miriam Adelson spending over $250 million on his campaign, that's more than enough to sway the president, whether or not he's blackmailed. And he decided to go ahead and do it. It's not working out for them, and it's actually backfiring now. It's backfiring because you took an 85-year-old supreme leader, you assassinated him, and then you put his much younger son in place that is more of a hardliner. His father, that was murdered, had a fatwa, which is a religious doctrine, is what they call it, and it stated that in their religion, in Islam, they believe that it is, having a nuclear weapon is forbidden. his son comes in place and has no such sort of religious law, religious doctrine in place, meaning that the chances of them wanting to race for the bomb are likely higher. So that ultimately defeated the one thing that they stated publicly they didn't want, which is Iran to get a bomb, which we know wasn't even happening. And now we actually have somebody in place that's more of a hardliner that doesn't want to negotiate with the United States because his entire family was just murdered. If it was anybody else, just logically, it makes sense that that's the direction things are going to go in now. Whether or not you agree with it, this is naturally the direction things are going to go in. So for anybody watching mainstream media, they're getting all of this footage, and we're all seeing it, of Iran getting hit really hard. Just a few days ago, we saw their oil depot, just tons of black smoke, really thick black smoke. I personally have never seen something like that in my life. And it started raining, really raining, raining acidic rain, black droplets everywhere. So they're getting hit really hard. The Israelis are getting hit really hard as well. They have a gag order in place. They can't upload. They're not publishing any of that online. We've seen videos of Israeli soldiers pulling away cameras, knocking down security cameras so people don't see what's actually going on, to see how bad it is. We know the United States and Israel are running low on interceptors. And now we actually have information that Donald Trump was calling up Putin, reaching out, trying to figure out how to go ahead and just simply get a ceasefire in place. They want to try to end this because the objective was to have a regime change. They recognize that now that's not going to work. If anything, it might have backfired because aside from just installing his younger son in place, you increased nationalism in the country, patriotism, because when you're getting bombed by a foreign invader, which is what these people are getting bombed by, and they see these bombs flying overhead and they see black clouds now raining down on them, and they recognize it's coming from an invader, well, now you increase patriotism within their own country, which is exactly what they didn't want, because they've been trying to ensue civil unrest in order to topple the regime, and what they just did backfired and is now doing the exact opposite. So it totally backfired against the United States, and we were put in a situation now, and this is when now it actually hurts U.S. interests much more than just this war with Iran, because there was very valuable intelligence that Russia and China gained from all of this. I mean, the Chinese had a spy ship in the region. They had a spy ship in the region, likely sending intelligence to the Iranians. But aside from the fact that they were likely sending intelligence, the Chinese now were taking all of this data on what the Americans are up to, how long it takes them to refuel, the way they're going about the war, how they are operating, and it's using all of this data and it's analyzing all of this data, and it's going to take that information in when they're preparing for any potential conflict scenario in their intelligence community with the United States. So now we're basically just giving them, it's almost like you're kind of giving them a playbook of how America operates. Is it always going to be the same? Absolutely not. But it's still intelligence that they didn't need to see. Why give them basically the latest playbook of how America is going to interact in this situation? That didn't benefit America at all. And now we're starting to hear reports as well that the United States wanted to move its missile defense systems from South Korea. South Korea recently, the South Koreans made a statement, South Korean officials stating that they don't support that they don't want that. So now we're seeing the fact that, okay, the United States has to move some of its military assets. That's worrisome. That's the same reason that in one of these clips, Lindsey Graham was saying, just go ahead and move everything we got over to Israel, including from Spain because of the rift. It's a separate issue. But it's not working out for us. And we knew it wasn't going to going into it. We knew it wasn't going to going into this, and we did it anyways. Now we have Israeli officials, including, by the way, the more left-leaning opposition party in Israel, Yair Lapid, I believe his name is. I'm butchering the pronunciation. And he is considered more the left-leaning guy. And he's the one who's saying, no, this is great. We want to take out all of their missile defense systems. We want to take out all of their missile factories, their production capabilities. We want to take it all out. So it doesn't matter to them. When you look at the polling, the Israelis are over 80% in support of what's going on right now, while the Americans are, I believe, definitely less than 40%, somewhere floating in the 30s. in support of this military action. And it doesn't bother them because the majority of the money is getting taken away from us, and we give them the military aid anyways. And when they don't have enough military aid, well, we just top it off for them, and eventually we write it off. That's the relationship between Israel and the United States. It's not beneficial to the United States at all. The Arabian Gulf, the Arab Gulf countries, the rich Arab leaders are now recognizing through this war that America is not a reliable ally. That America, when it came down to their security, America decided to go ahead and prioritize Israel. They recognize that. They recognize that. This took a really big hit in the rich Gulf oil countries, by the way, especially when it comes to their tourism. Now, personally, you know how I feel about the United Arab Emirates. I think they're a Zionist Trojan horse in the Middle East. Personally, I couldn't give less of a damn. Couldn't give less of a damn. Here's the thing, though. It does impact America, though, because so much of their investments they're investing so much into the United States. These rich Gulf leaders are investing tons into the AI bubble here in the United States that could really pop. It just depends on how the economy goes. It depends on if they're able to keep up these investments. And they're a major, major player in investments in the United States. If their industries, if their economies aren't going well, they're going to have to reassess their foreign investments. There was already an article in the Financial Times recently that stating that exact thing, that Saudi Arabia is analyzing its investments overseas to see if they can still continue maintaining this. Not just because of tourism, by the way, but look at all the airstrikes on their infrastructure as well. Oil, Strait of Hormuz blocked. So it impacts everything. It's not just about how this impacts the United States regarding ammunitions, but the economy, our relationship with these other countries. If you were Saudi Arabia or you were the UAE or you were Qatar or whatever else, you have this much investment into the United States and this entire situation happened. Well, if you have to put your country first in that, and you're in that position, if it was me, I'd be like, okay, this was a really great learning experience because now I know that having this U.S. base in my country might not actually benefit me. If anything, it might actually be a liability because now I'm getting airstrikes from Iran because of this. Noticing that the regime wasn't able to be toppled over, and America is the global superpower and wasn't able to topple over Iran, and you're a rich Gulf oil country recognizing this, well, you're going to be like, damn, wait a second, I need to reconfigure my approach here. If this is the case, then maybe I should start prioritizing having much stronger and tighter relationships with Iran so this doesn't happen in the future, which is likely what they're thinking now, of course. Geopolitically, it makes sense for them. They don't want to destabilize the region because they rely on so much foreign investment and foreign tourism. So moving forward, they're going to be like, okay, it's in our best interest to strengthen our ties with Iran. I can assure you that's what we're going to see moving forward, just at least to a level where the region can be more stabilized because the Gulf requires stabilization in the region. They seek that. Israel doesn't. Israel is more of a rabid dog. It seeks instability. Its entire foreign policy, is based on instability. And the rich Gulf oil countries, over, I'd say, the last decade especially, their entire policy has been based on stability and economic investment, financial industrial complex, while Israel is really focused on the military industrial complex model. And in America, we need to start reprioritizing, and America already is, whether America likes to or not. It can't maintain the American empire much longer. The country and the empire are two different things, and they contract. The world ebbs and flows. This is kind of how things go. And the American empire is starting to be really expensive on America. Maintaining Israel is becoming very, very expensive. And this can't go on forever. But we allowed ourselves to get thrown into this war because of Israel, really, because we have a president that's bought out, likely blackmailed, and we were thrown into this. And now God knows what's going to happen moving forward. It wasn't a good look for the United States, regardless of how much American propaganda tries to sell you that the Americans are heavily winning right now, that the United States is winning right now. That's simply not the case. It's not the case. And, you really kind of have to look at what's happening in international media to take a good look and recognize that. So let me go ahead and share my screen here one more time for you guys. And we see an article here that says Iran's parliament speaker states that Iran is not seeking a ceasefire with Israel and the United States. This was reported in Al Jazeera. It's reported in a lot of other places. And he said specifically, we are definitely not looking for a ceasefire. We believe that the aggressor should be punched in the mouth so that it learns a lesson and will never think of attacking our beloved Iran again. That's shocking. That's shocking. Because as Americans, we have been fed that, that we are the global superpower, and we are. That's true. Things are changing, but that's currently the truth. And now we're hearing this. And why is this? Because ultimately, the United States has massive amounts of military assets, massive military power. So you see Iran with a country that's smaller, that has less access, less military assets. But what they have is more strategy there because they were able to block the Strait of Hormuz, and regime change wasn't working, which was the entire goal of this whole operation. So now they're recognizing, wait, if we just block the strait here, we can start putting pressure on the United States, because while we're doing this, we're destroying all of these bases. The United States wants to pull out now because it's recognizing there's no point for this to continue to go on. Yes, it could continue bombing Iran. And everybody says, well, the United States is destroying Iran. It could just keep bombing Iran. Sure, that's great. But then Iran can continue to shoot missiles at Israel. People think that because Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon, it means that it isn't able to create mutually assured destruction with Israel. That's not the case. Because ultimately, you don't need a nuke to destroy Israel. With 10,000 missiles that they likely have, that are dispersed across the country, by the way, these missile launchers, they're not all into one. So one nuke isn't going to destroy all their missile launchers. They're scattered everywhere. If it really came down to such a horrific situation, they could definitely have some sort of mutually assured destruction. Because ultimately, you don't have to flatten all of Israel. You just need to destroy key infrastructure sites. Of Israel are trying to sell it off like Israel achieved its objectives and now it's time to end the war. This is coming from Israeli media, Jerusalem Post. This was posted today. And it says, when should the Iran war end? Achievements, risks, and the path forward. Analysis. Odd. Why now are we starting to hear the Jerusalem Post talking about when should the Iran war end? Well, that's really weird. With key objectives met, Israel and the U.S. are facing tough choices. Should the war with Iran end now, or are there more gains to be made? And of course, they're showing the bombing here on the oil site, and you see the black smoke that we were showing earlier, because again, it was a massive airstrike raid, and it caused massive amounts of black smoke. So if you're just somebody that's basing the success of this war on who's hitting harder and what's publicly available, then you're going to be like, wow, Iran's definitely losing. But if it comes down to assessing the war based on strategic interests and what the intent was anyways, and the cost of these missiles, then it paints a completely different picture. So now we're seeing this in the Jerusalem Post. Wait, it gets even worse. We see here, this is in Reuters, Israel not seeking endless war with Iran. The foreign minister, Gideon Saar, says. Well, that's interesting. We thought it was the exact opposite. Israel is not seeking an endless war with Iran and will likely coordinate with the United States on when to end the fighting, declining to give an exact timeline of when that can happen. It goes on further. We will continue until the minute that we and our partners think it is appropriate to stop. We are not looking for endless war. We want to remove for the long-term existential threats from Iran to Israel. He said for the long term. He was hoping that would happen imminently, but clearly now that's not the case. And he says we must not miss this opportunity with partial results. And he says here, there was an opportunity to create conditions for Iranians to regain their freedom, while acknowledging that it might not happen during the war and could come afterwards. So now they're starting to course correct, and they're putting out different statements, and they're trying to sell it off to their citizens as if that Israeli achievements were made. They weren't. The whole point of this was The whole entire point of this was regime change. It didn't work. And now we're seeing here, this is another Reuters article, Israel ahead of schedule on war goals in Iran, the ambassador to France says. And they're saying the exact same thing. We are ahead of schedule to achieve our war objectives. When we started this war, we were asked about duration. We said it would last a few weeks. That hasn't changed. And now they want to end things very, very quickly. We knew that they went into this for regime change. This was made available very, very publicly. Yes, Iran got a hit now, but ultimately what you did is you just installed a younger supreme leader who's more of a hardliner, who just had his entire family bombed. He's a pretty angry guy. He just lost everybody around him, and now he's more of a hardliner. Things would have been better off just leaving them prior to starting this war. And it wasn't like this wasn't known, because U.S. intelligence community told the Trump administration in a briefing this wouldn't actually achieve the results, but because our president is likely blackmailed and bought out, even if he wasn't blackmailed, $250 million, well, this is the situation we're in now. It gets even worse. I was talking about the hits that these Gulf oil countries are starting to have because it's hurting their economy. And now British Airways today, this was announced, suspended flights to Abu Dhabi until later this year, and to Amman, Bahrain, Doha, Dubai, and Tel Aviv until later this month amid Middle East tensions. Wild. Now think about if you were a leader of the United Arab Emirates and your entire branding was on how rich of a country you are and how safe your country is. And now British Airways is stating that they're canceling flights to Abu Dhabi and stating for the rest of the year, now that could change, for the rest of the year, well, damn, the United Arab Emirates now is going through hell. I mean, this is a country that's paying for Jennifer Aniston to do ads for Emirati Airways, crazy things like this. And now we're seeing this going on. They're getting really ticked off. And guess what? The UAE, again, is a Zionist Trojan horse doing Israel's bidding. This is, you know what? Good. I'm glad this is happening to the UAE. They thought that if they were just Israel's lapdog, then they would be safe. They thought that if they just give millions of dollars and they assist Israel in the destabilization of the Middle East, the genocide in Sudan, assisting in intelligence gathering, with the genocide in Gaza, they thought that if they just did those things and if they pushed anti-Semitism laws in their own country, and they were close to the Epstein class, the Epstein files riddled with Emirati names, they thought that if they just acted in that way, then the UAE would be great. And it would be allied with the West and they would be safe. This was the biggest slap in the face to them ever, because there was now a situation where Israel's interests and the UAE's interests diverged completely, because the UAE is right there next to Iran, and Israel is much further away. And these airstrikes are hitting one of its central industries, which is tourism, economy, and the showing off that the UAE is a stable, safe, especially, that's important country, the image. And now that image has been shattered and this is happening. They're furious. And guess what? Good. This is what you get. You've been a Zionist Trojan horse. You've been Israel's lapdog. You've been their servant. You've been subservient, and it's not working out for you. And honestly, good. I have no sympathies for the Emiratis here in this situation. Usually, never, because of just truly, just being an Israeli lapdog, and now they're recognizing it's not working out. Good. So that's what's going on there. Now, we still have U.S. officials are continuously talking about how Israel's a one-bomb country. And for the United States, apparently now this is the U.S. responsibility. It's in the United States' hands to stop the one-bomb country, to make sure the one-bomb country is always safe. So U.S. Special Envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, is going on again on TV stating that Israel is a one-bomb country. We've heard this a lot, plenty of times. Let's take a quick listen to this and let's talk about it.
I would say that, look, Israel is a one-bomb country. One bomb takes them out. And that's why it's so existential to Israel. But we can also see now with this offensive missile shield that Iran had to, in other words, protect the nuclear effort, and what it's doing, the havoc that it's raising out there with Middle Eastern countries. I mean, what they're doing is
Israel's a one-bomb
finally,
country.
Iran, what do you say?
Israel's a one-bomb country. Why is that America's problem? Why is that America's problem? Here's the thing. Let's say it's not America's problem. Let's say it was. Then if it was America's problem and we wanted to fix it in a way that would be good for America, the best way to fix it immediately is impose a Palestinian state on Israel. End everything. Just end all of the violence. End it. You want to bring peace? Every single geopolitical analyst on paper, it's been U.S. policy since Israel's establishment. It's been U.S. policy for a two-state solution. It's been U.S. policy on paper. Actions and what's written on paper are two completely different things. We know that it would be in U.S. interest to go in this direction, and then worrying about Israel being a one-bomb country wouldn't matter, because then you would stop the bombs from being dropped. But we're in a situation now where Israel doesn't want that, doesn't want the path the entire international community is telling Israel to accept. The United States also used to tell Israel to accept, and now that's not happening. So we have to allow Israel to destroy what's in U.S. interests. And while Israel is actively hurting the United States, we also have to worry about the fact that they're a one-bomb country when they're not listening to us to stop the bombs from being dropped. And now that's our problem? Why? Since when? Since when? George Washington, he said himself, he wrote, "Beware of foreign entanglements." This is the worst foreign entanglement in all of recorded history. In all of recorded history, go back to ancient Egypt. There's no worse case of foreign entanglement than the relationship between the United States and the Israel project. Nothing like it. And he goes on, he keeps talking about this. They garner sympathy for this. Another thing that they do to garner sympathy for Israel is they talk about how Israel is the, quote, only Jewish state. Whenever they're trying to garner sympathy, Fox News does this a lot, and U.S. politicians do this a lot. They'll say, how can we just leave the only Jewish state on its own like that? That's not good for the only Jewish state. They're trying to make you feel bad for abandoning one group, one small minority religious group. They want to make you feel bad for it. So that's when they say that, even though that only Jewish state, it's a foreign country, like any other foreign country, that shouldn't matter to us when we're making geopolitical decisions, but it does. It does, because they're trying to pull on your heartstrings. Everybody sees through that now, but we still see this consistently. Well, guess what? There's only one group of Palestinians called Palestinians, and they don't have a state. So, it doesn't pull on your heartstrings the same way. And ultimately, U.S. foreign policy shouldn't be what pulls on people's heartstrings. It shouldn't be based on emotions and based on being sympathetic while also getting slapped in the face because of it. That's not how you should conduct your U.S. foreign policy.
Say people deceive Americans.
He goes on, and this part is shocking. So she's asking him, what do you have to say to Americans that are struggling to make ends meet? Let me go ahead and just play it for you. I'm going to speed it up really quick.
Time for one more. So I'll just, finally on Iran, what do you say to people, Steve, Americans who, are struggling? They're worried about higher gas prices, higher grocery prices, health insurance, making ends meet, don't want foreign wars, certainly ones that don't have end dates and that risk American lives. What do you say to them about why this is so critical for the U.S. to be doing what it is doing in Iran right now? How do you persuade them?
I say to them, Sarah, that if they have children, think about what this world would look like if you didn't have Donald Trump as the president. Because in a year, if you had someone who didn't have the courage to do this action, you'd have 30 or 40 nuclear bombs. And what would the world look like there? So thank God we have a president and leadership at the helm that makes these courageous decisions.
If we didn't have Donald Trump, then things would apparently be much worse. So she's asking him, if Americans are struggling, what do you have to say to them? They should be grateful they have the president of the United States that is bought out over $250 million by an Israeli billionaire named Miriam Adelson. That's what we should be grateful for. Why? This is why people are really getting fed up with this stuff, because I know for a fact they know what's going on in mainstream discourse, unless they're truly alien to society and they don't see it. I know these politicians see it on social media. They see it. They know how Americans feel. And when they say this sort of stuff, it's like they're laughing in our face at this point. It's like they're laughing in our face. And they don't care. They do it anyway. Now, it's not just in the United States, by the way, that this Israeli occupation is happening. I've done a lot. We interviewed together. We did that interview with the Argentinian journalists while the wildfires were really making headlines and going horribly in Argentina about the Israeli occupation in Argentina. They have a group analogous to the Anti-Defamation League in Argentina. It's called I believe GEIA, something along those lines. And it's now criminal to criticize Israel in Argentina. You can actually end up in prison for it. In certain forms, you can actually end up in prison for it. Not just Argentina, though. Of course, we know, aside from the United States, Argentina, there's one more ally that refuses to drop Israel, that refuses to really speak critically of Israel at all. And that, of course, ally is Germany. So we had a German official today as well. It's not just Steve Witkoff. It's Germany's foreign minister warned that Iran's goals are to destroy Israel. He stated this today. So let's go ahead and take a listen here to what Germany's foreign minister has to say about everything going on. Take a listen.
To Israel, but to the whole region here and also to Europe. I said that before. It is, of course, that they still are following a program which could lead them to possess a nuclear bomb, which is, of course, a threat for the whole world, not only to Israel or to Germany. They are on a way with their ballistic missile program to possess really a huge amount of these weapons, which are threatening all of us, and so on and so on. And they are still feeding and commanding, as we see with Hezbollah, these terrorist groups which are attacking Israel, Hezbollah, Houthis, and Hamas as well. So this is still the case. And if they were ready for a diplomatic solution, it is achievable. But per now, this is what we hear from Tehran, they are not ready for a diplomatic solution. And as long as this is not the case, we still have to wait.
So I have to pause. I'm going to play the rest of it here, but let's talk about what he just said so far. The Iranians are racing for a nuclear bomb. Let's just assume that was true. The best way to stop Iran from seeking a nuclear bomb is to not make that country feel like they even have an interest in seeking one. Meaning that if you continuously bomb that country, then as the leader of any country that's getting continuously bombed, what you need to do as a leader is establish deterrence. You have to have some sort of deterrence. And if all of your missiles are not establishing the deterrence that you need to stop getting bombed, then you're going to have to seek additional levels of military deterrence. So if you were the leader of any country and this was happening to you, you're going to seek more strong, more potent weaponry. It makes sense. So the more that we bomb this country and antagonize, the more they're going to seek the bomb. Logically, that's what makes sense. That's just how things go. So the best way to stop Iran from getting a bomb is to stop bombing them. Oh, wow. Crazy thought, guys. Crazy thought. So the Iranians recognize that they are continuously getting bombed. They have to establish deterrence. One of the main reasons they bombed all of these surrounding countries, financial hubs of the world, Abu Dhabi, Bahrain, all of these oil installations, is because they needed to establish deterrence. And because their military assets weren't enough to establish deterrence, then they had to destroy and hurt the economy, because that is a form of deterrence. They know, the Americans and the Israelis know, that if they bomb Iran, then it's going to hurt the economy, not just like any standard war, but a lot. Because they know that Iran is going to respond by hitting these economic hubs of the world, and they're going to block the strait. So that's a form of deterrence. That's a form of economic deterrence. You're going to go ahead and do that. In Taiwan, they have a different form of deterrence. The Taiwanese, they make about 70% of the world's semiconductors, I believe higher than that. So they know they call it the Silicon Shield of Taiwan, because Taiwan knows that there's only one company in the world, the Taiwanese semiconductor company. They know that the world relies on them, including China and every other country, for their semiconductors. They know no country wants to invade them, including China, because it would destroy the economy. because the entire world relies on these semiconductors. So I'm just kind of talking to you about different forms of deterrence here. And the best way to stop Iran from getting bombed is to not bomb them. The best way to stop Iran from seeking a nuclear bomb is to not bomb them. But that's not happening. That's not happening, clearly. So let's play more of a, let's take a listen to the rest of what he has to say here.
Always to be ready. I was leading together with my colleagues from the United Kingdom and France, the conversations about the snapback mechanism. It was already about exactly these issues. And the result was there was no readiness on the Iranian side to really make the world a safer place. So if the readiness would be there now, everything is achievable. But at that very stage where we are right now, we still have a regime in Tehran which formulates clearly its main political goal, and this is to eliminate the state of Israel. And this cannot be neglected, especially not by the German government.
Especially not by the German government. Iran's goal is to eliminate the state of Israel, and the German government can't handle that. Okay, again, this really just goes back to thinking logically and not just going based on emotions or going based on Israeli occupation. If you really want to keep the state of Israel alive, and, you know, my personal opinion, get rid of it for all I care. But if you really want to keep the Israeli state alive, then you have to stop allowing it to go manic across the Middle East. You have to impose a state of Palestine. You have to impose the state of Palestine on Israel because they're not going to allow it if it came up to them. You have to impose it, meaning sanctions, meaning cut off of trade. You have to impose it. And if this is what's so funny is that the Israelis are so set on never recognizing the state of Palestine, and ultimately that is what I believe is going to lead to their downfall. That their refusal to accept the state of Palestine and to want to annex the entire West Bank and continue to be a stressor, not just on the region, but the entire planet, continuing to require this aid, this diplomatic coverage, the more that they try to resist the one thing that will bring peace, the more that it will eventually lead to their downfall. You want history, you want evidence of that. We have what, 2,000 years of recorded history or more that shows you that when you overextend an empire, or where you're overextending and you're in constant war, you can't keep it. They're maintaining an occupation of 3 million Palestinians in the occupied West Bank, 2 million around Palestinians in Gaza. It's not maintainable, which is why right now their goal is expulsion before the end of Trump's term. And hopefully they're so isolated and they're such a pariah state that we never see this coming to fruition. The one thing that could bring peace for everybody, including for Germany's sake, they're so obsessed with protecting Israel. Here's how you force Israel. This is what you do. You force Israel to recognize the state of Palestine, and Israel's protected because 57 Muslim countries, the entire planet, the entire Arab and Muslim world, will ensure Israel's safety and security. They stated it themselves now. Everybody's sick of it. The Arab Gulf, rich Arab Gulf countries, they're sick of it. They just want all of this to end. It's been decades. Let's just end this. Let's end the violence. Let's stop this. They're so concerned about Iran because Israel's a one-bomb country and Iran seeks to destroy Israel. Well, if that's the case, the best way to weaken Hamas and Hezbollah, the best way to weaken those two is by not giving them justification for their existence. You justify their existence when the Palestinian people are being wiped out. It assures Hamas and Hezbollah that they need to continue doing what they're doing because it's in their views, they're doing it to stop this from happening. And the more it's done, the more it justifies their actions. So the best way to stop it, to weaken everything, to stop all of these groups that they want to stop, the best way to do that is by imposing the state of Palestine. It stops. It stops. This really doesn't require, 300 IQ. It doesn't. This is very, logical stuff. You can explain this to anybody if they set aside their bias. They don't want to do it. They don't want to do it. And now we're all going to suffer. We're all going to suffer because of this. It's reaching. God, it's so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. And you know why we suffer? One, of course, is because of the Zionist occupation. And also because of religious belief, evangelical Christians, which ties directly into Zionist occupation because evangelical Christians are Zionists, ties directly into it. So we have people like Pete Hegseth and Mike Huckabee in office, they don't want it either because they believe Jesus Christ has to come back down. And the only way they can do that is by making sure that Israel takes over everything and they build the third temple. So now we have also this, religious aspect of it that's very odd, very insane. Most of the world thought it was conspiracy. They didn't actually think our politicians would act based on that ideology, but they are. And now people are starting to recognize that, especially this past year, especially the past 3 months after Mike Huckabee's statements and a lot of content related to this going viral. How else are we going to achieve peace? And here's the thing. Let's say that Israel achieved the one thing that it's really set out to do, which is to expel the Palestinians from Gaza and the occupied West Bank. Let's say Israel did that. Are they going to have peace then? If you think they'll have peace then, your head's so far up your arse because ultimately you just push the conflict out. And now you have 3 million Palestinians in Syria and Jordan, wherever else, also definitely in the West because these countries can't absorb that many. They've already absorbed so many refugees. Their countries are also going to be destabilized. The whole region's destabilized. That's not an alternative solution either. It's not. And Israel would love to just nuke them all. But guess what? It's Israel, Palestine, the Holy Land, very tiny region. They can't do that either without hurting themselves. So they're stuck with this conflict. The world's stuck with this conflict. We know the solution. Zionism has occupied all of the major governments in the West. So even though we know the solution to stop all of this, we can't implement it. We can't implement it. And that's where we're at. So separate from all of this, now, when we talk about the Zionist occupation, we have individuals that actually care about America. We have individuals in Congress, very, very few, very far in between, that actually care about America. And one of them being Thomas Massie, Republican Congressman Thomas Massie of Kentucky. Now, regardless of how you feel about his politics, what I feel, and you can have your opinion on this, is that he's authentic, at least in the fact that he really does care about America and he is a patriot. I very much so believe that. And he's somebody that is, of course, really upsetting the Israel mafia, AIPAC. And now, because Donald Trump is a Zionist, totally bought out by this Israeli mafia, he's going after him. He's endorsing an opposition, and he's really going after him. So let's take a listen to this, because this was really shocking when Donald Trump called Thomas Massie, and he talked to Thomas Massie on the phone. Take a listen to this. Let me go ahead and play this.
President got mad at me.
Guys, there we go. Take a listen.
President got mad at me. You've heard me say this before. He called me on the phone 3 times while I was on the floor of the House. I let it go to voicemail 3 times. I didn't have him in my phone. Technically, I didn't know it was him, but it was all zeros, right. And I figured there's only one person can get a phone number with all zeros. So I did call the White House back, and they put Trump on the line, and he said, "I'm coming at you like you've never seen. Never in your life before have you seen the way in which I will come at you. I'm more popular than you in Kentucky, and you know it. I'm backing your primary opponent, and you're going to lose." And then I tried to talk to him about the Constitution and that it required us to vote. And he started screaming at me for 3 minutes. And then he repeated everything again and, hung up on me.
So this happened. This was posted yesterday. I didn't know. I didn't know about this. He's talking that Trump apparently called him because of the pushing for the Epstein file release. He called him and he said all of this. And this is what really, there were previous instances before the whole Epstein file release that Trump made statements about Thomas Massie. That's for sure. This set him off the same way it set off Marjorie Taylor Greene. And now he's backing his opposition to the primary. For those who don't know, in the last Republican primary in his district, Thomas Massie won by a massive margin, I believe over 70%. Was it 77% that I saw? But definitely over 70% of the votes in his district went to him. So he's been doing great. His district really loves him. Well, here's the thing. Things are a lot different now because we have Donald Trump that's heavily pushing for his opposition. And Thomas Massie now is in this situation where there's a lot, not just Donald Trump, but millions and millions and millions of dollars. Miriam Adelson also getting involved in this race. Attack ad after attack ad after attack ad. AIPAC going in hyperdrive like we've never seen before. The Israel lobby salivating at the idea of getting this guy out. And now we're starting to see that here we have Trump. This is an article, Courier Journal. Trump to visit Kentucky amid Massie primary. President Donald Trump will visit Kentucky in the coming days. Trump will visit on March 11th. So this is, tomorrow, according to an invitation reviewed. And earlier in the day, he's set to visit Cincinnati. So he's going to be going around. The event will take place at 1 p.m. tomorrow. And he's going to be there, and he's going to be in northern Kentucky. And he's going to be trying to garner up sympathy and garner up votes for the Republican primary opponent. So this is kind of where we're at now. I'm curious to know if he's gonna, how successful this is. So I went ahead and, this is just so we have something to look at. And I'm looking at the polls now, and this is Kalshi, Kalshi, I always mispronounce it. And this is just the polling betting. And I was looking at Poly Markets as well. They're pretty accurate. The closer you get to the date, the more accurate they are. And what we're seeing now is it's pretty shocking. We're at 53%. Massie went down 53%, 51% for Ed Gilren. So this is the chances of who's going to win. Now, of course, this is in gearing up to Trump campaigning there tomorrow. So I'm sure this is going to swing back down and it's going to swing up and everything. But now it's getting worrisome because they're starting to be pretty neck and neck here. That is pretty worrisome. But again, this is just a betting thing. This is not actual polls. And of course, when Trump meets and he's going to be there, I'm sure that we're going to see this spike up even more. And then when Trump leaves and Thomas Massie gets more good headlines written about him, things change. These numbers are going to fluctuate. But it is worrisome that they're even this close. I honestly thought we were going to see Thomas Massie be at least consistently above the 70s the whole time. But, he's never had Trump go into hyperdrive trying to boot him out. And, this is what I'll say. If this were to happen, it's really, I'm never going to throw in the towel on American, political corruption. I'm not going to do it. We have to stay in the fight. But if this were to happen, it would be a massive hit. It would be a massive hit because he's really one of the lone voices. And Marjorie Taylor Greene left. We have Ro Khanna on the left, and he's still there. So we still do have some, but they're really lone voices now. And they're trying to get out the one guy who's made a major impact. And of course, this is because of the Epstein file release. I'm really hoping his district pulls through with him. It seems like he's been doing good. I've even been donating to him. But ultimately, and I've been doing a lot of research on this, that as much as there's online talk for a politician and they're doing, attack ads and everything else, nothing makes more of a difference than actually being there in person. Poster, voting booths, going door knocking, all of that sort of stuff. It makes a massive difference. So if you're in Kentucky, do everything you can, especially if you're in his district, do everything you can to kind of just help. If you're really trying to stop the Israeli takeover, this is one of the most important things because ultimately it also sets a precedent that if Thomas Massie doesn't win, then other people that are considering running in their primaries are going to be like, well, I have to support Israel if I want to win. Well, I need to have the president of the United States backing if I want to win. It sets a precedent. So less people are going to be confident enough and have the courage to do what Thomas Massie did because they're going to look back and be like, well, it seems like if I do this based on what happened to Thomas Massie, I'm not going to succeed. So it's not just about this specific race. It's also about the precedent that it sets. Because if this were to happen, well, it sets a really bad precedent that's going to push us a little bit further behind. I'm praying. I really. This if he gets out, it's going to be a really dark day for America. It's going to be a really dark day for America because now we have another establishment puppet that's going to be sending tons of money to Israel, and it really just kind of it's going to be a big bummer. And I hope it doesn't happen. I feel pretty confident. I feel pretty confident. We'll see how things go tomorrow. I'm hoping within his district they really start to speak out. But the one thing he doesn't have on his side, which we have to counter, is he doesn't have the media on his side either. He doesn't have the mainstream media because it's the establishment. Donald Trump is campaigning in one direction. Fox News is going to be following Donald Trump. He doesn't have the mainstream media on his side either. So we have to counter that. And what the Trump administration and what the RNC are trying to do now is they're trying to brand him as a left-leaning, a radical leftist. That's the best thing they can do, because they know if they brand him as a radical leftist, it's going to turn off the Republicans that are voting for him, especially if, you have these Fox News watchers and everything else. So there's now an interest in branding him as a leftist to try to sway his voting base, stating that he's not conservative and he's not aligned with their values. Even though if you go, there's the name of the website is slipping my mind, but there's a website that basically analyzes Republican voting records to conservative values, and it gives them a score. I believe it's Liberty something, and it's consistently scoring Thomas Massie. Is it 100% or something incredibly high? While the average, Lindsey Graham, for example, it might actually just be called Liberty score. Lindsey Graham, for example, he's consistently at, I think, an F, somewhere in the 60s or something when it comes to his voting record and aligning with conservative values. So somebody stated here, Adam, left or right does not matter. It's theater. Absolutely agree, Adam. I mean, that's ultimately the thing, and we really have to push this because, unfortunately, millions of Americans right now, they're still in this whole sort of left versus right dichotomy, and it's really unfortunate. We're just going to have to wait and see. Again, do everything you can. I'm going to be doing everything I can because there's nobody else. There's a few, but there's not that many. And the establishment, as much as the public is turning on Israel, especially now after this war, the establishment is doubling down and they're really trying to dig deep and tell us, hey, stop. You guys aren't going to win. It doesn't matter. You don't think the underdog is going to win. The underdog's not going to win. Mark Levin, he said it himself on speech. I think it was at the RNC. This clip of him is really ingrained in my head where he said, you think your stupid little podcast is going to be able to change the world, not if I and everybody else have something to say about it. It sounded like a villain speech from a movie. You think you can change the world. Every single hero in a movie tells you that you can change the world. And then we have Mark Levin, of all people, telling you that if you don't support Israel, you can't change the world. You think your stupid little podcast and everything else. Those are the people we have to counter. And right now, more than anything, making sure that we keep Thomas Massie in place sets a really good precedent. Really good precedent. So to the index of other news, what's going on right now in the occupied West Bank has been getting a lot worse. And with all focus on Iran, the violence and Israeli policies in the occupied West Bank are absolutely manic now. Israel's national security minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir, now has established and allowed for more weapons, more guns to be given to people in Jerusalem, in occupied Jerusalem, in Jerusalem, to these settlers, and is handing them out like candy now to Israeli settlers, of course not to Palestinians. For those who don't know, Palestinians aren't allowed to own weapons in the occupied West Bank, only Israelis. Palestinians, of course, under a different court of law. Israelis with Israeli citizenship living in occupied Palestine among Palestinians without the same citizenship. That's blatant. That's literally just textbook definition apartheid. And now he's giving them weapons. Lots of weapons. Now, for those who don't know, I think about this video a lot. Let me share my screen here. This was 3 years ago now, and it's Itamar Ben-Gvir right over here, and he's handing out weapons to Israeli settlers in the occupied West Bank, handing them out like candy. Here's the video. Shaking their hands. There's Itamar Ben-Gvir in the white with the white kippah. These are all settlers. They're not Israeli citizens just in Israel proper Green Line borders. These are Israeli settlers in the occupied West Bank, and they're smiling and they're giving weapons. Now, if you're looking at these rifles and you're wondering, well, where did they get their rifles from? Guess what? A lot of it comes from your tax dollars. The M16 rifles that are given to these radical settlers in the occupied West Bank are coming from the United States. All the weapons, no. A lot of them, yes. M16 rifles in the occupied West Bank come from the United States. Now, on paper, when we give these weapons to Israel, we have it written, of course, that it's not going to go to the occupied West Bank. Lots of articles, Haaretz, the Israeli newspaper, has written lots of articles about how they eventually just get into the hands of the settlers. We give Israel this military aid, We state that it's going to the IDF, and then all of a sudden now you have them literally, they were literally just handing it out like candy. And they're just handing it out like candy to these settlers. So, you know, I'm hearing people saying they can't see the video. Oh, did you guys not see what is happening? Wally, we can't see. Thank guys. Let me go ahead and play it. So here's the video. Let me know if you guys can see this now. Take a listen. Tell me if you guys can see this. So here you go. And you're seeing Itmar Ben-Gvir here. Let me mute the volume. We're seeing Itmar Ben-Gvir here just handing out the weapons, these M16 rifles, to these settlers like candy, literally like candy. Let me know in the comments, guys, if you guys see it this time. And these are coming from the United States again. These are M16s. And like I was just saying, Haaretz, the Israeli newspaper, is weird. You guys don't see this video right now? Okay, well, it's just Itmar Ben-Gvir. I'm surprised. Here, let me go ahead and turn off my remove from scene. Are you sure you want to remove this layer? There we go. Let me go ahead and try this, guys. I'm sorry about that. So now we have Itmar Ben-Gvir here. Let me know if you guys see this now. You see my screen here? I'm sharing my screen. You guys see me, though, I'm pretty sure. Anyways, if you guys just let me know as long as you see me. I'm really shocked that this is happening right now. It's not happened before. Anyway, so it's Itmar Ben-Gvir. He's handing out these rifles. Get a producer, Wally. I know. I'm working on a producer, guys. Let me help support my channel so eventually maybe one day I can afford one. But he's handing out these rifles, and now they were handing them out to just settlers in the occupied West Bank. And now they're just giving them out like candy to everybody in occupied Jerusalem. And this is kind of what's going on. And now he's going to continue to just give out these weapons. For those who don't know, also what's happening in my family's in the occupied West Bank as well. And one of the reasons they're doing this is because ultimately they want to be in a situation where if there was a civil war in Israel and the IDF was preoccupied, or there was a foreign war as well, that the settlers are also their own military. And the settlers are basically this own militia. So this is also what's happening now, is they want the settlers to basically be a militia, to be able to expel the Palestinians if shit hit the fan. Excuse my language. If things really went south, then you have the settlers now that could expel the Palestinians for themselves, and they don't need to rely on the IDF doing it. So this is kind of where we're at now, and this is what the Israelis are up to. This is what they're trying to do, and it's working. And nobody in the U.S. government is stopping us, because guess what? I mean, ultimately, it's our weapons. The United States is endorsing it, and nobody has interest in stopping it, so it's just going to keep going on. And guess what? If Palestinians speak out, if Palestinians in the occupied West Bank record it and show all of this sort of violence, well, it's not going to really work out. Because ultimately, the Israelis have posters and flyers all across the West Bank that if you try to share footage of what's going on in the occupied West Bank, well, that can be a criminal charge. Sharing my screen again. If it's not showing this time, I don't know what to do for you guys. I apologize. I tried my best here, but that's kind of where it's at. That if they try to take footage and speak out about what's happening, well, unfortunately, we're just going to keep seeing them be criminalized, and we're going to keep seeing more of this. So that's what's also going on there. Let me share my screen here one more time. Let me know if you guys see this article here. Over the past year, and this goes to Ben-Gvir in Israel, over the past year, the Israeli police have given increased residency based on eligibility for gun permits, even if they didn't themselves go ahead and finish their military training. They're still giving these weapons to them like candy, even if they actually didn't finish any military training, meaning they could be 18-year-olds. But guess what? And I should have actually had the video playing for you guys, because I took videos and my family's consistently sending me videos of 13-year-olds and 12-year-old Israeli settlers from Yitzhar, the settlement next to my family's village, coming down the settlement, and they do rounds now. They put on fake IDF uniforms and they do rounds. They come down from the mountaintops and they do the rounds, and they walk around the Palestinian villages, again, 12-year-olds, and they do this to basically scare the Palestinians. So apparently the 12-year-olds and 13-year-olds are getting these weapons, and it's nobody's stopping it. So now we have even these kids, and then they'll still tell you that the extremists are actually the Palestinians. That's what they'll tell you. They'll tell you actually the issue is it's the Palestinians. It's nobody else. That's what they'll go ahead and say. So it's you know, that's kind of how everything works. Now, that's gonna be it for this video, guys. I'm gonna try and work on it. I'm gonna try to do another video later tonight, and let me know if we can get that box thing seen, because it was working out up until the last 10 minutes. It might be because I actually went over and it's a 110-minute live stream. I don't think I've done that before. Maybe it like glitches at an hour or something. Anyways, guys, if you want to support my channel, the best way you can do that is by super gifts and chats. Honestly, super gifts and chats help me out. It allows me to do this as a full-time job for you guys. And also, if you haven't yet, you can click the join button below and you can join as a member. When you join as a member, it's like $5 a month, and I do member-only videos as well every single night. So you can choose those videos, and then you can also type into me if you want to see any specific video topic you want me to do or anything else. That would be the perfect place for you guys to go ahead and do that. So hope you support my channel. Hope you guys enjoy this. Otherwise, I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.